Welcome back, this is Luca, and despite promising myself that I would behave, a week ago I purchased the Sony A7RVI, which, by the way, is recording me right now. So you're seeing what this camera is capable of doing when it comes to video throughout the duration of the video. And in this video, I just want to give you my very first impressions after a couple of shooting in different scenarios, and I want to tell you why I changed my mind, why I wasn't going to purchase it, but then I decided that I would. And I want to start this video with the unboxing, which is nothing to write home about. You get a brand new camera box that made its debut with the Sony A7RVI. The box is just a little bit bigger, but besides that, it's the same style. And inside the box, you get the usual paperwork, and I like the fact that it's not that much paper because we all read stuff online. So I think we could get rid of the paperwork all along, but fine. You get the brand new battery, which is the new SA type of battery, but we're going to talk about that later. You get the dual charger, which is a good addition. And I want to talk about that. In some of the videos that get released at launch date, some of the YouTubers said that they were getting two batteries with it. I believe that was something that they were getting because there was a review sample. The normal sample, at least in Europe, gets sold with one battery. So I just want to get that out of the way. What I was saying is you also get the accessory that helps you keep the cables attached to the side of the camera. It's something that I don't use much, but it's there, and if you need it, it's in the box. You also get a very, in my opinion, cheap strap, because for a camera that costs slightly below $5,000 and above 5,000 euros, you deserve a better strap. But besides that, you have it if you need it. It's there. And of course, you get the brand new camera. Now, the overall feeling of the camera is very familiar. If you've ever held in your hands an A7RVI, it feels pretty much the same. And while there are some differences, unless you know what you're looking at, it's going to be really hard to tell that you're holding one versus the other. But when it comes to differences with the Sony A7RVI, the most notable ones are the asterisk mode on the top dial. That to me seems subtle, but it's a very important one because you lose basically one custom setting on the top dial. You go from 3 to 2, but that asterisk gets you the possibility to reach through another button 10 additional settings, 10 additional customizations for each of the 3 shooting modes, whether it's pictures, video, or slow and quick. That is really important to me because I have multiple scenarios where I need different stuff, and by only having 3 custom modes, sometimes it has happened to me that I forgot to adjust one of the settings because the situation is very similar to what is my, let's just say, custom mode number 3, but I need to change that minimal detail. For example, in a ceremony that I shot with the A7RVI, I forgot to activate the stabilization. I was on a gimbal, so it was hard to tell that the stabilization was deactivated, but once I got back home, I immediately saw that something wasn't there, and it would have helped removing those micro jitters that you still get when you use a gimbal. Again, minor stuff, but accessing 10 different customization per shooting mode is a big thing for someone like me who does a lot of stuff and has its own preferred set of settings. So to me, that was one of the things that drove me towards the A7RVI. You also get the button on the top that allows you to illuminate the buttons that you see on the back. Unfortunately, it doesn't illuminate the top 2 dials, the 2 dials that are on top. But besides that, you can customize the amount of light that those buttons have between 3 different, low, medium, and high. So you have customization on that as well. And if you don't need to illuminate your button, you can assign that button to something else. One thing that I would have wanted differently was that once they did that, I would have loved to have like a long press function of that, because if that was the case, I could have add the long press function of that to the illumination and leave the one press to something else. And I'm nitpicking there. I'm glad that we have those additions. You also have a tally light on the front of the camera, which looks like it's the first for a Sony non-cinema camera. You get a slight bump on the side of the lens mount, and that together with the button illumination, it's something that is clearly targeting those astrophotographers that are in complete darkness. And you also have a slightly different grip. Now, the grip, if you don't know that it's different, you're not going to be able to tell. I personally wasn't able to tell that it was a different grip compared to the A7R5. It is, but it's not that big of a difference. But it's a difference that is big enough to throw away all your accessories, because the camera size is ever so slightly different. You can't use the same cage, you can't use the same plates, you can't use the stuff that you're already using. It sucks, especially because the difference is very, like, we're talking a couple of millimeters here and there, no more than that. But it is what it is. You also get a different battery, but as I mentioned, we're going to talk about that later. And the one thing I forgot talking about the top dial is that I like the fact that you can lock it, but the problem that I have with it, and I have the same problem with the A7R5, is that every time you want to rotate it, you need to have your index finger to push it and rotate with the other one. I would love to see a click to lock and click to unlock so that I can decide when I want it locked and when I want it unlocked. It's a minor difference, but that would help the usability of the camera. No big deal, but something that I wanted to throw out there. And one thing that is different, but it's not, you're not going to be able to tell while looking at the camera, is that viewfinder. Because the viewfinder on paper has the same resolution, but this new viewfinder is HDR capable, it's way brighter, and most importantly, it's not going to lose resolution as you focus continuously. As you intensively use the camera, you don't have the bottleneck that probably the A7R5 had, where the computational power wasn't enough to do everything. In this case, you get the best quality of our viewfinder, which is already better than the A7R5, and you get it all the time. That, to me, is a huge, huge improvement. Now, besides the physical differences, where this camera makes a lot of a difference compared to the A7R5 is the sensor and the sensor technology. Yes, you get a few more megapixels, you go to 67, 66.8 versus 61. It's not a difference that would justify going from one camera to the other if it wasn't for the fact that together with the addition of megapixel, you get a much, much faster sensor. It's approximately 5 times faster than the sensor on the A7R5. And with the mechanical shutter, this doesn't make any real difference because you're not using the electronic shutter, which is what was basically unusable on the A7R5. What you're getting with the A7R6, you're getting a usable electronic shutter. You're getting 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter, with blackout-free experience, so you're not going to experience any blackout as you're shooting bursts, and you get usable fast burst that you wouldn't be able to access with the A7R5, which in its mechanical shutter was capable of getting 10 frames per second, but you would lose quality while getting up there, so you only had like 7 frames per second at its maximum quality. With the A7R5, you get 30 frames per second at its maximum quality. That is a huge difference. And they achieved that with a fully stacked sensor. Now, fully stacked sensor means that the entirety of the sensor gets read at a much faster rate than a non-stacked sensor. However, there is fully stacked and fully stacked. When the camera was launched, a lot of people started to mention this is an A12 killer. The reality is, while this camera is much, much faster than the A7R5, to the point where the A7R5 was unusable with electronic shutter, the A7R5 is actually really usable, and it's most of the time it's even better than the A7V. It's still not as fast as the A1 Mark II. So while it's not the A1 Mark II killer, what it's doing is it's basically setting a standard where you can get the A7R6 for pretty much everything, unless you need super fast readout, because the A7R6 is almost 5 times faster than the A7R5. Well, the A1 Mark II is almost 5 times faster than the A7R6. So it's a much faster sensor, not to mention the A9 Mark III, which is a global shutter, and it's faster than anything else in the world. So you have those cameras. Those cameras still have a reason to exist. It's just that now less people are going to need that top-heavy camera, and they can live with what the A7R6 can get you. And the reason why they're not going that fast with the sensor readout is that they're not using the stacked architecture of the sensor to put in there the fastest memory in the world. What they're doing is, yes, they're giving you a faster readout, but they're also working to get you the best image quality possible, which is what the A7R line has always been for. So there's, even if they're making a much faster camera, they're still keeping that horizon pretty level. The A7R5 gets you the best image quality you can possibly ask. And they deliver because they get you that dual gain output, which gets you, in theory, an additional stop of dynamic range. We're gonna test all of that in a video that I'm gonna make when I compare the A7R5 and the A7R6, because I happen to have all three of these cameras. So subscribe, you're not gonna miss that one. What I was saying is, you get more dynamic range, and you also get the dual gain output function in video up to 3200 ISO, which gets you more dynamic range and gets you more latitude so that you can pull your shadows up much easier than you could with other cameras because of that dual gain function. So the A7R6 is an image quality dedicated camera. It just happens to be very fast. And speaking of video, as I mentioned, the camera is recording me right now. This camera is now becoming a very capable video camera. Not that the A7R5 wasn't, because I've used it as my main video camera for a while. It was still a very good video camera, but this is a completely different animal. You have 8K up to 30 frames per second. You get 4K downsampled from 5K up to 120 frames per second. And if you enable the angle of view priority, you get basically full frame 4K 120. So you get something that it was impossible to even imagine with a camera like the A7R5 or any of the A7R that you had before. You get that complete package. And speaking of video, one of the claims that Sony made was that they made an improvement on the stabilization. Now, right now you're seeing me and you're listening me through the internal microphones. You see me with the standard stabilization, so no added electronic help. It's just the sensor moving around, and you can tell for yourself whether you like it or not. Let me also show you how it works if I'm trying to hold it relatively steady going forward, and in a split second we're going to move to active. We are now in active stabilization. The frame is a little bit tighter. I'm still on 16 millimeters on my 16 to 25, and I'm holding the camera by the lens like I did before. You can tell that it's much better than before, and if I walk forward, it should get definitely better. It's not perfect, but it gets definitely better. We will in a second switch to dynamic active to see how it does. And I'm now in dynamic active. Now, dynamic active should be mostly for standing still, trying to simulate a tripod. In dynamic active, you get a much higher zooming in, so the crop is pretty higher, but it should be better if you hold the camera, if you try to hold the camera completely steady. These should feel pretty steady. Now, if I start walking, it should still be good, but I believe it may
add some jitters, but you're looking at the footage before I do, so you know better than I do. You can tell for yourself what you're seeing.
When it comes to performance, because at the end of the day, this is what matters, I used uh, this camera in a professional portrait shooting scenario, and I also use it for a landscape and a little bit of wildlife photography. It's enough to let me tell you what I felt that this camera was giving me. It was giving me a pretty impressive dynamic range. Now, I don't know if it's one stop better than the A7R5. We're going to compare that in that video that I mentioned. And it also gave me a super reliable auto white balance, which is one of the claims that Sony made, because now they have the new sensor, the new AI technology that helps it. I don't know if it's a better auto white balance compared to other iteration of the cameras or other Sony cameras. What I can tell you is that throughout the shooting that you're seeing over here was a professional shooting scenario where I was shooting with flashes and I was shooting on the outside. I made the rookiest of the mistake that you possibly make. I left auto white balance on. It wasn't on purpose because I would never want to do that, but it happened. I left it on auto, and what happened surprised me. I got super consistent auto white balance throughout the shooting. A maximum of 200 to 300 Kelvin variation when it comes to color temperature, and a maximum of 0.2 to 0.5 hue variation throughout the same scene. This means you basically can make your workflow faster because you copy and paste all the settings and you're going to get basically the same result. You don't have to worry about it. And that was consistent when I moved to another location, still very consistent. So that surprised me a lot. And last but not least, I think the colors were really good. The image is punchy. It's something that I like a lot. You're seeing it zoomed to 100% right now on a 67 megapixel sensor with a very good lens. This was the Sigma 35mm f1.4 Mark II. The camera gets you incredible image quality. But besides image quality, what is really impressive was the performance. Because from a performance standpoint, the battery life is really surprising. And it's hard to be surprised because one of the reasons why I didn't want to purchase the camera was because of the need for a brand new battery. And I also thought they made an incredible work with the A7 V, extending the battery life compared to previous Sony cameras. Why did they need to come up with a new battery to throw people off? Now that I've used it, I can tell you that while the A7 V is incredible when it comes to battery life, the A7R5, despite being more demanding, gets you better battery life than the A7 V. And how can I say that? Well, throughout this shooting that I mentioned before, I shot over 400 shots over a 3-hour span. It was shooting with flashes, so you couldn't shoot super fast burst because the flash wouldn't have time to recharge. So 400 shots, give it a take. And at the end of the shooting, the model was looking through all the pictures. She was taking some snapshots because she wanted to show those as a story on Instagram. People do that. And at the end of the day, I started with a fully charged battery. I ended up with a 71% remaining battery life after an entire afternoon shooting, looking at the pictures, zooming in, zooming out, and setting the camera because I was still trying to find my groove with this camera. It is very impressive from that standpoint. And for the first time, it's the first battery that you can charge faster than it can go down. So let's say you only have 2 batteries. By the time you run out of battery with the second battery, the first one, if you have a fast power delivery power bank, the other battery is going to be fully charged. This gets you a pretty good resistance throughout the shooting day. And I believe with a battery like this, you're gonna need 2 batteries, no more than that, for an entire shooting for like a wedding or stuff like that. It is incredible from a battery standpoint. It hasn't overheated on me, although Yes, it's summer, but it's only a week that I've been using it, so I'm gonna have to follow up on that once I use it a little bit more. But what's impressive with the camera, as already mentioned with the specs, is how fast it is. The 30 frames per second are impressive at 68, 67 megapixel sensor with a 67 megapixel sensor. The blackout free is an incredibly nice experience to witness and to use a camera like that. And even the rolling shutter, I was panning. Don't look at these pictures looking for something great. It's not. I was panning just to see the rolling shutter performance. You can see something. You can see a little bit of rolling shutter effect, but it's not bad, especially if you consider a 67 megapixel camera. That performance is impressive. And together with the high dynamic range and the wonderful viewfinder experience, the full package is just incredible. That being said, I have a couple of gripes. I already mentioned one, which is the fact that the camera is almost the same as the A7V and A7R5 when it comes to the shape of the camera, but that almost makes a lot of a difference because you can't fit the same cage, you can't fit the same accessories and stuff like that. This means you need to purchase a lot of new stuff. That sucks. I don't like that at all, especially because the difference is so minute that I think they could have fit it. I believe they could have fit it. The other thing that I hate, and this is a big thing that I believe people need to know and doesn't get discussed much in the other reviews, is you had with the A7R5 something like the medium-sized RAW files. Those for me were critical because when I was rocking the A7R5 as my main camera, sometimes you don't need all the resolution. Sometimes you don't need to waste all that memory in your cards and in your hard drive if what you're doing is for social, what you're doing is like a wedding doesn't need 67 megapixels. With the A7R6, they got rid of that possibility and you only access the smaller size when you zoom in with the APS-C mode. Now, I hope they can come back on this decision with a firmware update. That will go a long way. And my usual gripe with Sony is, yes, their screen articulation is really good. It's the best in the business. Probably Panasonic has something similar. I don't know which one is the best, but it's the best implementation for sure. I like that. However, the screen for a $5,000, 5,000 euros camera is not that good. Yes, you can push it to daylight settings where the screen is brighter, but now compared to what you see in the viewfinder, the difference is pretty big. And you have a camera that is capable of HDR, and you see the HDR in the viewfinder, but you don't have HDR capable screen on the back. It's a half-baked solution that I don't really like. And another thing that I don't like is some of the factory settings are, in my opinion, wrong. The focus bleeding compensation is turned off by default. Go and fix it immediately if you purchase the camera. If you purchase any new Sony camera, it starts off for whatever reason. The red frame around the screen, which is very useful. Yes, you have the telelight, but this red screen is something that helps a lot. It's turned off by default. The fact that you have a mechanical shutter protecting your sensor when you turn the camera off so that when you're switching lenses is protected from dust, it's a function that the camera has, but it's turned off. I don't know why. The fact that they still decide to have that dreadful NTSC PAL selection in the time zone settings drives me nuts. All the other cameras don't need that, and you can go from 24 to 25 to 30 to 60 to 50 to 100 to 120 regardless of a specific setting. For whatever reason, Sony is still sticking with that NTSC PAL that it's basically annoying as hell. Now, I set it to NTSC because I usually shoot at 24, but like my brother shoots at 25. And if I have to shoot for my brother with my brother, I need to switch from NTSC to PAL just because of that. And then once I turn the camera off, I need to remember the next time I need to remember to switch it back to NTSC because my usual workflow is at 24 frames per second. It's stupid. Sony, find a way to get rid of that. These gripes are definitely not a deal breaker, but it's something that is annoying. Now, when it comes to me, I initially told myself, Luca, you don't need the A7R6. And I honestly still stand by that. I didn't need it. However, as I dove into understanding what this camera was capable of, something clicked in me, and it's the fact that while the A7 V and the A7R5 was a very good pairing of cameras, the A7R5 couldn't do a few things that I do pretty often, as well as the A7 V does: wildlife photography or 4K 120. You cannot use pre-capture. With the A7R6, what I get now is a camera that is basically going to be my main camera all the time, with the A7 V becoming my secondary camera, the camera that I'm going to use for YouTube. Right now I'm using the A7R6 because I'm showing you, but the A7 V is still going to be my YouTube camera because I don't need anything more than that. And as a backup camera, it does pretty much everything that the A7R6 does besides full frame 4K 120. So I now have a fully interchangeable kit of cameras, with the only downside of having two different batteries and slightly different accessories. So in my opinion, the A7R5 is an incredible all-around camera. It just needs those tweaks that I mentioned, especially from a software standpoint, the small size RAW and stuff like that. But besides that, it seems to be an incredible camera. Now, if you like this video, which was way longer than I expected, subscribe, like, and make sure to activate your notification bell, because I will fully review this camera. We're going to deep dive in the image quality and all that stuff, and we're going to compare it with A7R5 and an A7 V, as I mentioned, to get you a full comprehensive guide on which one is the right camera for you. And also, I have a lot more stuff coming. So make sure you subscribe. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions on the A7R6. If you want to know something, if I forgot to mention something that is really important, those comments are there for that. Ciao, grazie, and I'll see you in the next one.